I'm the pen that drew the dream of American freedom, Thomas Jefferson, Declaration of Independence. I was carved from the heartwood of a Virginia oak in the spring of 1775, my nib fashioned from the wing of a wild goose that soared over the Potomac. My maker's hands were gentle yet firm, whittling away the excess until I emerged, slender, purposeful, ready to serve. The craftsman's workshop smelled of wood shavings and linseed oil, a humble birthplace for what would become an instrument of revolution. He worked by candlelight, his weathered fingers knowing exactly where to cut, where to smooth, where to leave the wood's natural strength intact. The craftsman handed me to a young shopkeeper in Williamsburg, who in turn sold me to a tall, red-haired gentleman with penetrating eyes and an air of quiet intensity. His name was Thomas Jefferson, though I wouldn't understand the weight of that name until much later. When he picked me up for the first time, testing my balance and feel, I sensed something extraordinary about this man, a restless intelligence that seemed to vibrate through his very fingertips. Those early days at Monticello were filled with what seemed like mundane tasks, correspondence with friends, notes on architecture, sketches of inventions dancing in his brilliant mind. I traced his thoughts about crop rotation, his detailed observations of the natural world, tender letters to his beloved Martha. The ink flowed through me like lifeblood, each word a small piece of his soul transferred to parchment. I learned the rhythm of his hand, the slight tremor when he was excited about a new idea, the careful deliberation when crafting particularly important phrases. But as 1775 wore on, I noticed a profound change in the weight of our work together. His letters grew more urgent, more passionate, filled with a fire that seemed to burn brighter each day. Words like liberty, tyranny, and independence flowed through my nib with increasing frequency, each one carrying more weight than gold. The very air at Monticello seemed charged with revolution, crackling with the energy of momentous change approaching. Visitors came and went, speaking in hushed, urgent tones about events in Boston, about British soldiers and colonial resistance. I didn't yet comprehend my destiny, but I felt it in every stroke. I was being prepared for something momentous, something that would echo through the corridors of time itself, reshaping the world in ways I could scarcely imagine. June 1776 brought the humid heat of a Philadelphia summer, and I found myself in a modest second-floor room at Market and 7th Streets. The boarding house of Jacob Graff Jr. had become our temporary home, and the window overlooked a bustling street where the sounds of revolution hummed in every conversation. Merchants, laborers, and gentlemen alike walked with purpose, their faces etched with the gravity of the moment. The air itself seemed thick with possibility and danger. Jefferson had been chosen for an impossible task, to put into words what had never been written before, to justify breaking the chains that bound 13 colonies to the most powerful empire on earth. The Continental Congress had assigned this monumental responsibility to a 5-man committee, but the actual writing would fall primarily to the young Virginian. The weight of this task pressed upon us both like a heavy mantle. For days, I watched him pace the small room, his mind racing faster than his long legs could carry him. He would pick me up with sudden inspiration, then set me down again, wrestling with concepts that had no precedent in human history. How do you write a breakup letter to a king? How do you declare that common people, farmers, shopkeepers, mechanics, have the inherent right to govern themselves? The room was stifling in the summer heat, but his passion burned even hotter than the humid air that pressed through the windows. Legal books lay open across his portable desk, Blackstone, Coke, Locke. He would read passages aloud, testing how the words sounded, how they felt in his mouth. Sometimes he would pause mid-sentence, staring out the window as if he could see the future taking shape in the busy street below. Carriages rattled past, children played in the dust, and somewhere in those ordinary scenes he was finding the extraordinary words that would change everything. Then came the evening when everything crystallized. June 11th, as twilight painted the sky purple and gold, Jefferson finally sat at his portable writing desk, a clever contraption of his own design that could fit comfortably in his lap. He adjusted the angle, tested the light, and then reached. And for me, the moment his fingers wrapped around my wooden shaft, I felt the familiar tingle of purpose. But this time, it was magnified 1,000-fold. He dipped me into the silver inkwell, and I knew immediately that these words would reshape the world. When in the course of human events, he began, and I felt each letter form with the weight of destiny behind it. The opening phrase flowed like music, setting the stage for what would follow. Night after night, we labored together by candlelight, the flame casting dancing shadows on the walls as we worked to birth a new nation into existence, with nothing but words and will. The phrase that would echo through eternity came to life in the flickering candlelight of that cramped Philadelphia room. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. As these revolutionary words flowed through me, I felt a cosmic shift, as if the universe itself was holding its breath. Here was an idea so radical, so fundamentally challenging to the established order of kings and nobles and divine right, that it would send shockwaves across oceans and through the gilded halls of power worldwide. Jefferson's hand moved with steady confidence now, and I was his faithful companion in this unprecedented act of defiance. Line by line, paragraph by paragraph, we catalogued the grievances against King George III, building an ironclad case for rebellion that was both legally sound and morally unassailable. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive, of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it. Each word was a hammer blow against the ancient chains of tyranny that had bound humanity for millennia. I marveled at how Jefferson wove together philosophy and law, emotion and cold logic, creating a tapestry of justification that was as beautiful as it was revolutionary. He drew from John Locke and Montesquieu, from his own experiences in the Virginia House of Burgesses, from the collective frustrations of an entire continent yearning to breathe free. Through me, he poured out the hopes and dreams of merchants in Boston and farmers in Georgia, of lawyers in New York and laborers in Pennsylvania, of everyone who believed that common people could be trusted to govern themselves. The rough draft grew longer, more powerful with each passing hour. Sometimes he would pause, setting me aside to walk to the window, gazing out at the bustling street below, but seeing perhaps not just Philadelphia, but a future nation stretching from sea to shining. See ya. Then he would return to our work with renewed vigor, refining a phrase here, strengthening an argument there, polishing each sentence until it gleamed with clarity and purpose. I could feel his certainty growing with every word we wrote together. This wasn't just another political document, another petition to be ignored by distant rulers. This was a blueprint for human dignity, a declaration that people everywhere deserved to choose their own destiny. As we wrote about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, I felt the weight of every soul who had ever dreamed of freedom. Every person who had ever believed they deserved better than the circumstances of their birth. July the 4th, 1776. The date that would forever be etched in golden letters in the annals of human history dawned clear and warm, with a gentle breeze that seemed to carry the whispers of destiny. Inside the Pennsylvania State House, the tension was so thick you could have cut it with a knife. 56 men had gathered to vote on our words, the Declaration of Independence. I remained with Jefferson, but I could feel the weight of history pressing down on every syllable we had crafted together in that hot second-floor room. The debates had been fierce, the editing sometimes painful. Jefferson winced, as Congress struck out passages, particularly his condemnation of slavery, a moral compromise that would haunt the nation for generations. But the core remained intact, the revolutionary heart of the document beating strong and true. When the moment came for the final vote, the silence in the room was deafening. Then, one by one, 12 of the 13 colonies voted yes. New York abstained, but even that couldn't diminish the magnitude of what had just occurred. When John Hancock took up another pen to become the first to sign our document, I felt a strange mixture of pride and humility. His signature was bold and large. "So, the king can read it without his spectacles," he reportedly joked. But I knew that those weren't just ink marks on parchment. They were drops of liquid courage made visible, commitments sealed in black ink that could cost these men their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor. "We must all hang together," Benjamin Franklin had quipped with his characteristic wit, "or surely we shall all hang separately." The grim truth behind the humor was not lost on anyone present. These men were signing their own potential death warrants, choosing honor and principle over personal safety. Yet one by one they stepped forward, transforming our words into a living covenant, a sacred promise to future generations. As the delegates filed past to add their signatures, some bold, some hesitant, all meaningful, I realized the full magnitude of what we had accomplished together. These weren't just words anymore. They were a declaration of human worth, a promise that people could be trusted to choose their own leaders, to think their own thoughts, to live their own lives free from the arbitrary rule of kings and nobles. Years have passed since that momentous summer, and I rest now in honored retirement, my greatest work complete. I've watched this nation grow from 13 rebellious colonies into a sprawling democracy, stumble through civil war and constitutional crisis, learn from its mistakes and grow stronger. The words I helped bring to life have inspired countless souls across the globe. In France, during their revolution, in Latin America, as Spanish colonies threw off imperial rule. In places Jefferson could never have imagined, they've been invoked. By Frederick Douglass fighting slavery, by Susan B. Anthony demanding women's suffrage, by Martin Luther King Jr. calling for racial equality, by all who seek justice and human dignity. Each generation has had to rediscover what those words mean, to expand their promise, to include those originally left out, to make real the dream of equality for all. I am just a simple pen, carved from Virginia oak by unknown hands, yet I carried the weight of an idea so powerful it changed the trajectory of human civilization. In my humble nib dwelt the dreams of the oppressed, the hopes of the downtrodden, the unshakable belief that all people are created equal and endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. These words, born in a stifling Philadelphia, room during a sweltering summer nearly 2.5 centuries ago, remain as relevant today as they were then. They remind us that freedom isn't just a privilege to be enjoyed by the few, but a birthright to be shared by all, that the price of liberty is eternal vigilance, and that the dream of equality must be renewed and fought for in every generation. I am the pen that traced America's dream of freedom, and through me that dream became immortal, a beacon of hope that continues to shine across the world, calling to all who yearn for the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.